All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Zoom with the Principal. Before we get started, I just want to give you guys an update. As you see me in my no makeup look today, I'm actually at home today. I shared this with the staff this weekend. My mom has shifted to hospice care, and so I'm having to spend a lot of time with her, and so I am doing that today. As much as possible, I'm gonna I'm gonna be trying to figure out the balance of, still working and spending the time I need with my family, but taking it day by day right now. But balance is our topic for today. Yvonne and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about helping our students and our families, of course, find that balance, because oftentimes we feel like we give mixed messages for the high school. you know um so like next week the counselors are going to be here to talk about like everything that kids need to do to graduate from high school and get into a four-year college. What classes do they need to take, what A through G is, and like all of this, and they'll talk about the SAT, and they'll talk about all of that. And so I feel like we're constantly giving the message of like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this to get into a four-year college. But at the same time, we talk about like, don't overstress yourself. Your students should need to find that balance, and they shouldn't overload themselves, and they need to like, have a good, where they're not, causing themselves undue stress and anxiety. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want just to know, like I've shared with you guys, I am a parent, and I am so guilty of forgetting this myself. I know how important balance is, and I know how important it is to help your child keep focused in high school. But at the same time, like I find myself like, when my son started high school, I'm like, well, he should be taking a world language because he's got to get into college, and he's got to do this, and he's got to do that. Even though my son, that may not very well be, that may not be his path, and like he's going to find his path. And so I just want you guys to know that I too struggle with finding this balance with my teenager, and what advice to give, and what, you know, when do you push and when do you back off? It's hard. So, Yvonne, what do you have for us?
Good morning, everyone. As I was for this presentation, I was kind of reflecting on my junior and senior year of high school. And it was actually my junior year was actually the year that I started dating who is now my husband. And I was thinking back, and what were my priorities then? And what was I thinking about my future then? And the reality is I was not thinking about anything other than probably him and sports. And somehow I still managed to like find some, find success in my life and live this happy life. And um I wonder the same thing for my kids. Like I think as teenagers, it's like we're kind of wired to have fun and just kind of do that. And so it's kind of a big shift when we're asking our kids, like, what are you going to do with forever? And like all these deep questions that my 17-year-old brain didn't even process. Like, I was like, oh, I'm having fun. I'm playing sports. I'm, doing all these cool things. I didn't think about, I didn't think about anything relevant to like my future at all. Now our culture, there's the huge shift, and I think the greatest thing we could do to help our balance is to model balance. And so I always like to start off with ourselves, right? And how balanced are we now? And I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, I just feel like there are not enough hours. I come to work. I get up at 6 o'clock. I'm here till usually like 4. I get home, try to exercise, do something, cook dinner. I'm exhausted. There's not a whole lot of time to just be. And my schedule is less busy than my children's schedule. And so I think for myself, like, gosh, my kids don't have a whole lot of balance. It's really school and then home for those few hours that they're there. So I want to just take a few minutes to reflect on ourselves. And if you guys want to throw it in the chat or even speak out, how balanced do you feel? Like, do you feel like there's enough hours in the day to do all the things that you need to do to stay healthy and happy? Anybody?
No. Not at all.
Mhm. Yeah. Anybody else open and willing to share? Rupert has too many. I told you that after two. Just kidding. It's a lot.
I don't have too many yet, but I do have too many.
Yeah, like what percentage of your day, Rupert, is for you?
Let's see. I wake up at I don't wake up at any time. I'm always pretty much awake. I find myself falling asleep on the couch every day. Um, Zero balance. Like my work, coming to work is the only chance I get to have a break, and it's not really necessarily a break. Um, but I find even that drive home is like the only time I have to myself, really. And then because when I leave here, there's 2,000 kids here. I go home and then there's 2,000 kids in my house. So it's not really necessarily ever a break, but I enjoy it. I'm not really too stressed out over it. I do have my hobbies and my vices, and I do try to make time for my wife as much because there's on the flip side, I do have my wife as well, who needs breaks because her job is pretty much the same as mine. We're 50-50 on that when we watch everything, the babies, and yeah, I'm probably the most in need of your guidance on this topic, other than being able to share something that I could possibly provide anybody else in terms of information or advice. I'm probably eyes wide open, ears right now, waiting for you to give me something.
He says, I only have a kiddo and still not enough time. It's a constant challenge, and I learn and I focus on a few important things. It's true, we have to start to prioritize our day. For me, my priorities are work and then getting something for the kids to eat, whether I have to drive through it, order it, cook it, whatever. Those are like the two main things that I feel like I have to accomplish every day. More often than not, I get those two things done. But there's so many other things that make me, right? There's so many components of our life. And, for us, it's like you become your work, right? Or you become the parent to your children, but you forget about all these other components of your life. And we're going to talk a little bit about that make you, you. And we don't really have a lot of time to focus on those things. So I'm going to share my screen because I learned how to do it earlier, I think. Did I do it?
You have the share screen. There you go.
Okay. So I just put together a little slideshow about balance. Okay, so I want to talk about, what does a balanced life even look like? For those of us who don't have any balance, these concepts here might feel a little bit foreign. So I want you to just take a minute and think about these statements, and if you can relate to any of them. What does a balanced life actually look like? It means that you have time to do the things that you need to do and the things that you want to do. So for me, like, do I have time to like hang out with my friends? I try to make time for that, but I know for a fact I cross the things off that I need to do. But as far as the things I want to do, I don't know. A balanced life could also look like not dreading going to work. I feel like I got that one. Having clear boundaries for when you're off work and resting. Spend plenty of quality time with friends and family. Do y'all have time to do that? Feeling excited to get up and make it through your day. I actually laughed out loud when I saw that one. I'm like, that's not really how I wake up in the morning. Like, yay, today's going to be amazing. That's not me. So if that's you, fantastic. You might be the one to give us advice. Taking care of your physical and mental health. I feel like this can be a full-time job. And when we talk about all the other things that we have to do in our life, how much time do we actually put into our physical health and our mental health? Saying no to things that won't build you up. How many of you are good at saying no? How many of you say yes to everything and you want to be helpful at the expense of your own sanity and time and energy. And a balanced life looks like having a strong community that supports you. So if you're just looking at this list, you know, how many of you feel like that's you, that's your life, you're super balanced? Again, if there's anyone, I would love to hear how you're making all of that work. Oops. How do I change?
Oh, there should be, there you
Sorry.
go. I was going to say, Yvonne, I find with myself, if everything for like a half hour during the week, everything's going perfectly, there's no crises at work, there's no like issues at home, and like everything's just the way it's supposed to be, then I'm very balanced. Like it's all perfect. As soon as like one thing goes wrong, there's like one crisis, it all gets out of whack. So.
And unfortunately, none of our lives go smoothly, right? So,
right.
So like at its heart, balance is simply about considering all the various parts of your life and how they work together and how you'd ideally like them to work together for more happiness and less stress. So it's about all those different components. What makes you up, you know? And so the reason we're having this conversation is because why is balance so important for us? And really, there's so many benefits to it, you know, just physically, like improve health. Like if you're stressed, stress is so damaging to your body, to your mind, to your mental health. If you're feeling balanced and you have time to do all those things to take care of yourself, you're going to have improved health. You're going to feel happier. Anytime we have less stress, you're going to definitely feel better. I notice that when I'm super overwhelmed, like at work or at home, even, I'm really not productive. My mom calls it spinning. She says that she can tell when I'm overly stressed because I'm spinning. I'm starting things, not finishing them. I'm kind of all over the place and not being productive at all. Like it looks like I'm doing something, but I'm really not, like no direction. So I know that when I'm feeling more balanced, I am more productive. And I think, you know, one of the things we really want for our children and for ourselves is just to enjoy life. Life is short, life is fragile. You know, we don't have a whole lot of time to do all the things that we love, yet we spend so little time actually doing those things. And so, you know, the importance of this balance is really to just be able to feel good, you know, be productive and just enjoy our lives, enjoy the people that we share our lives with. And so hopefully you'll get some strategy. So again, I wanted to start off with our own well-being. We are constantly consumed by our children's activities. I know those of you with younger kiddos, I remember going to the baseball fields like 4 times a week. I remember running people to tutoring. I remember doing all these things I don't have to do anymore, thankfully. But at the expense of my own health. Amy has some, so I know she knows that, you know, I had to go to the park and do all these things and still manage to, you know, and get my house clean and all those things. So consumed and exhausted by their children's activities, many moms and dads have abandoned their personal relationships that will help sustain them. As many as 60% of surveyed parents confess to letting their kids' activities crowd out grown-up time with their friends. You know, how many of you actually have standing time and standing dates with your friends? Anybody? Is that a priority in your life that you encourage? How come? Oh, there we go. Okay, so rarely do we look at our life in like this big picture, right? We think about like the things that are important, like our kids' grades or our kids', you know, friendships or whatever, but we rarely take time out of our day to step back and assess this kind of big picture of our lives. And so one of the tools that I use, and I think I've used it before if you've been here with our parents before, is the Wheel of Life. And the Wheel of Life really captures a snapshot of how much energy you're putting into each category about your life. So this is a valuable tool that we use in like assessing our students just to see where they put their most energy, where most of their stress is coming. Are they doing healthy things to just stay balanced? And so this is a picture of a teenage life wheel. And so I want you to take a couple minutes just to look at all the different categories. And so school, the way that we do this life wheel is we take each category and we want to kind of gauge how satisfied we are with each of these components of our life. So if I'm a teenager, I'm thinking, how satisfied am I with school? And when I think about school, I think about my relationships with my teachers. I think about my relationships with my peers. I think about how much I'm learning, how much fun I have there, if I feel safe. Like those are all different components of school. If I'm thinking about my grades, it's like, am I doing the best that I can do? Am I getting the scores that I want to get? How do I feel about the work that I'm getting? Do I feel like it's too difficult for me? So those are all things that I want you to start thinking about in regards to your children. When we talk about family, how much time do we spend with our family? And not just how much time we spend with our family, but what is the quality of the time we spend with our family? A lot of time that I'm spending with my boys, I'm grilling them about school. I'm grilling them about cleaning up around the house. I'm telling them how they suck at helping, and so I can say, yeah, I spend a ton of time with my kids, but if I'm really thinking about the quality of the time I spend with them, a lot of times I'm on my phone, right? So if I were to ask my kids, how satisfied are you with family time? My kids might say something like, well, you're always on the phone or scolding us, right? And so this wheel of life is going to be a way that we can assess to see like how satisfied they are on all those areas. I don't ask my kids very often about friendships, and friendships are super important, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is a category that is probably one of the most important things to our teenagers, yet it's one of the things we ask very seldomly, how they're feeling in that category. Are you getting along with your peers? Do you have people that are supportive for you? The next category is health. And when I'm talking about health, we're talking about physical health. We're talking about emotional health. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about this. So how satisfied is your child in regards to their own health? And again, is this a question that we ask them? Is this a topic that we talk about with them? The next category on this wheel is fun, leisure, recreation, things that our students do just for the sake of doing them because they enjoy them. How much time do your kids spend doing things that they like? And for some of us, we might have kids that spend way too much time playing video games or doing something fun, right? And so, this is how they will gauge that. Like, are they having fun? Are we giving them permission to have fun? If I were to ask your children, does your mom encourage you or your dad encourage you to have fun? What would they tell me? When's the last conversation you had with your kiddo about just having fun? The next category is your room or your environment. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but people always say that your bedroom, your desk, your backpack, your space is a reflection of how you feel on the inside. If I were to turn my camera around right now and you were all to see my desk, you could tell that I was a little bit stressed this week. There's kind of papers everywhere and kind of junk around. So we're going to ask our children, like, how satisfied are you with your environment? The house, your backpack. Some of the kids have their own room, some of them don't, but just how safe, secure, and in control of their environment are your kiddos? And this is all going to make a little bit more sense on the next slide, but in the next category is growth. Like, do your kids have time to focus on just personal growth? What are they doing to, make themselves a better, more productive member of society? So I'm going to plug my computer in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a wheel for our kids. So not everybody has the same categories that are important to them, right? And so, for some of our kids, spirituality is important. For some of our kids, health and fitness is important. So it's something where we're going to want to create one of these for ourselves. And I'm going to put a link in the chat so I can give you access to this. But basically, what's going to happen is you're going to have a wheel that looks like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask your children to score each category of this wheel by drawing a single dot in each one. So just as a reminder, number 1 means that your child is not satisfied at all in this area of their life, okay? And a 10 would mean that everything in their life is just perfect in that category. So take a couple minutes. Does that make sense? Did I explain that clearly enough? So this is what a life wheel will look like, and this is what it will look like when we fill it out. So your kiddo will put a dot in each category, and then when they're done putting the dots in each category, they're going to connect the dots. And it's going to create this kind of odd shape. Hopefully it's a round shape. Ginny, I've had you do these before, right?
Oh yeah, many times.
many times. Sometimes I'll just throw them on the desks of my coworkers and make them do them. So if you look at the shape, it is usually going to be a very odd shape. And so the way I explain this to the kids is I want to pretend that we are on a journey through life and you are driving a car through life. And your car, their wheels, the tires on the car are shaped exactly like the shape that they created through. So you see it's a little jagged, it's a little flat on some sides. So if you were driving a car and it had 4 tires that were all shaped like the shape that you created, how comfortable would your ride be? Would it even be possible to drive your car? So again, I'm going to put a link in there so you can do this at home. And for the most part, I've never had somebody with a perfect circle. You know, mine, I tend to focus my energy on work. And then I seem to lack in like, you know, my marriage or health and fitness, things like that. So if you were to look at this category, just not even thinking about our kids right now, but thinking about yourself, which of these areas would you say you put the most time and energy into? And which of these areas do you not even really think about? And again, you might not be, you know, relating to spirituality or whatever one's not important to you, that's okay. But just if you want to throw in the chat, like, or any of these, what would be your category that is like your number one priority that you put all your time and energy into? Ginny, put you on the spot.
Work. Probably work.
And what category would you say is lacking?
Right now, I mean, I think with what's interesting, like with this, it changes on where you are in your life. So like, you know, you could do this like 6 months from now, it would be totally different. I would say right now, probably the personal growth and learning is like something I'm completely neglecting. Like that's just like, and honestly, like I'm kind of okay. Like I'm like, I don't have time for that right now. Like that's such low priority right now.
And in 6 months, that might be your number one.
Right. Right.
How about you, Amy?
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's very easy. I think what's lacking is health and fitness, and what I'm doing really well in is the family one. But I have 2 toddlers at home, and honestly, that consumes all of my energy when I'm not here.
Rosales, what about you?
I lean heavy on the partner in love, family and friends.
Mm.
And even well, given my position, community, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm very rounded on there. And then it just like triangles out all around, like health and fitness. No, I'm here most of the time. So career and work, yes. Money and finances, we're not going to talk about that. So spirituality, though, I just recently baptized my youngest. So spirituality, I'm pretty good right now. I don't know what environment means, but I would definitely say personal growth and learning and health and fitness are like, they're like in the Earth's core. They're like right at the, they're in
Oh,
there.
I think of environment, I think of just like my space, like my house, my room, my just every, like all the places that I kind of reside in. That what I think of when I think of environment.
Yeah.
Some,
And I like to think
somebody
my money
wanted,
and finances are higher score, but nah.
I
My
think
circle
the
makes a
wheel,
W like after a while.
I think the will never be perfect.
we're constantly a work in progress.
Mm.
Somebody says, I could do it again a week from now and it may be different, but at the same time, I never give enough time for health and fitness and spending more time with God, my spirituality.
What I like about doing this, and I have done this for myself, like I said many times, I like how it changes because it's a good reflection tool to like sit back and like think about where you are in your life right now. And so that's what I really like. And I like how it constantly changes because your life constantly changes.
And it always gives us something to strive for. I think I do the best when I have goals set. And, you know, right now I'm trying to get on the health and fitness one, but yeah, it's happening. So when you review that wheel, when you're looking at the wheel, and again, I'll put the link in at the end so you can have access to that. You can print one out for yourself, for your partner, for anybody in your family. The questions that I'll ask, and these are like questions that you can ask your children, because it'll create some dialogue, right? And it's not just going to be focused on school. What surprised you the most about your wheel? Can you even fathom what a score of 10 all the way around looks like? I feel like nobody has the energy to be a 10 everywhere. Like, I feel like something always has to give. If I'm really doing good at work, I'm probably going to cook dinner less, right? If I'm really doing the whole family thing better, I'm probably not going to finish my case notes at home. So I think something's always going to give. I can't even imagine what a 10 across the board would look like. And then which category would you most like to improve? That's a question you can ask your kiddos, and they might surprise you. You know, how much time, what percentage of your day do you spend in each of these categories? And is there any of them where a single action could improve more than one area, right? Because like my health, if I'm exercising, it's also going to improve my, you know, my self-esteem and my mental health, and even maybe my relationships if I'm feeling better about myself and I have more energy to spend time with my family. So just knowing how, you know, is there any of these things where one positive action could impact all of them? So now we're going to switch over to our children, because we talked about ourselves and finding out that we're probably not all the most balanced. And, you know, we always talk about modeling for our kiddos. So when you think about your kiddo, I want you to think about how important is each of those categories to you about your child? How important are their friendships to you? How important is their environment to you? How important is their spirituality, their health and fitness, their school, their family relationships, their grades? You know, as a mom, I think if I actually reflect on it, I want my kid to feel a 10 in all of these categories. But what our kids interpret, the topic that we ask the most about is the one that my kiddo was going to think I care the most about. So if you were to look at the whole category again, like all the different categories, which of those categories do you think you have the most conversation about with your kids? You know, and it might differ depending on their age, right? When they're younger, you might have more, you know, conversations about health and fitness or whatever. But for you all, the topic you ask most about is the one your child thinks you care the most about. So what would that be for you? Davis.
I probably school, though I should know better, but I would say school.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else brave enough to confess to us your number one topic of conversation?
There's some in the chat. So school, homework, school,
Food.
Mm-hmm.
food. Oh, food.
And I guess I just
Food
want to
always brings us together.
What's
Sorry.
that?
Food always brings us together.
Yeah.
So I'll switch off like, oh, because I have 4 children. Okay, who's gonna pick dinner tonight? You know, and we all kind of go around and decide what we want to do, and it opens up for more conversation.
I like to focus on who my kid is hanging out with. So whether it's a female or it's a male, I usually ask them, like, oh, are they in your AVID class? Are they also from your previous school? Does your mom know them? Because, you know, my wife worked at their K through 6, so she knows most of the children. Um, given point now, he's currently dating one of his kindergarten classmates, and we had to bust out the old pictures of the kindergarten to figure out who it was. And then we kind of go like, okay, you know, we remember her. She was a nice kid. And then, but that usually, like, I kind of want to know who they're hanging out with. If they have the same core of friends, if they're, you know, how come your friend hasn't been in school? I'm gonna call the guy from Silver Creek and have him check in with the family, you know, stuff like that. That's what I kind of tend to do now. I kind of work in my work with my kids.
So what would your kiddo say is the most important aspect of their life to you based on your conversations?
I mean, they care more about like after I'm done grilling them and asking them all these questions, it's like, what's for dinner? What are we gonna eat? I think that's like the only thing they do, and then like they go straight into doing their homework. But it's like as long as they're fed, they're happy.
I love it. So I always wonder if like I'm in alignment with like how I feel. Like I want my kids to be safe and healthy and happy, but is my dialogue with them, does that reflect that? Like would they believe that that's my priority? Or would they think my priority for them are good grades and going to college and doing all that? Like they're both important. It's not to minimize one or the other, but if I had to guess, my kids probably think that I care mostly about school than anything else. And that's kind of a sad realization because it's not true. You know, again, I didn't really care about school when I was in high school and still managed to figure it out. But we're also at a different time where, you know, colleges are more competitive and all these things. And so I noticed my own anxiety about my kids' future impacting how I communicate with them. Like, you guys got to get it together. It is not cheap to live in the Bay Area. And if you don't go to college, it's going to be really difficult, you know, all these kind of scary conversations. And I kind of forget to talk to them about things that are actually really, really important. So just some food for thought. So I'm going to take a couple of these categories. Let me see how much time we have. A couple of these categories and like why they're so important. You know, when my kids ask if they want to do things on the weekend with their friends, I'll always ask them like, are you doing all these things, you know? And so I wanted to ask the question of like, do we encourage our children to spend time with their friends? Or is it something that's like a reward for doing all their responsibilities, right? And there has to be balance. Like they do have to be responsible. And I'm not going to let my kid go to the mall and hang out with his friends if he has a bunch of homework he hasn't taken care of. But do I actually encourage him to spend time with friends? Sometimes I think I do. I like to know that he's out and having fun. But then there's times where I don't because I feel like there's more important things that he needs to be doing. And so this slide here is basically just like, why are friendships so important to teenagers and why should we encourage them? So for anybody else, is this something that you're actively encouraging with your teenager? Anybody?
I encourage balance with my boys. Responsibilities, take care of your responsibilities, and then you can go have as much fun as you want.
Yeah.
So, like they'll ask me, can we go hang out with our friends? Yep, make sure your chores are done, and then you're free to go.
Yep. I have some kids who I ask them, I'm like, how much time do you spend doing fun things on the weekends or after school? And they're like, I don't know what you mean. And I'm like fun, like things that aren't for like your college apps that maybe you just want to like do. And they're like, I don't really know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, that tells me a lot. Because friendships are important, right? They lead to better emotional well-being. It's a way that kids start exploring their independence. I think it's fun when my kid takes the light rail to Great America with his friend and learns how to navigate the world. And that's something that I've learned with my second one. My first one, I was very kind of hovery, overprotective, didn't let him do anything. And then what ended up happening is he went off to college the first year and was essentially like frozen. He didn't have all the skills because I think I kind of hovered a little bit too much. And so, you know, noting now that like his friendships are super important. It gives him some autonomy and some ability to just like navigate life with somebody else that's a support for him that's not me, because I can't be there all the time, right? And so friendships are super important part of adolescence. Do you encourage your teen to have fun? If so, what does that look like? And when is the last time you asked them about something fun? You know, and the benefit of fun is like you figure out what you like, right? Because you might not figure out what you like just in your classes, because you might not like any of your classes, but when you're out doing things, you figure out.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't come off mute soon enough. This is Sean. Sayla Finkley is my daughter. And I am just, my ears are ringing as you're talking, because for me, friendships have become the replacement for social media. I'm like, go and play with your friends, go outside, get some vitamin D, get some fresh air, have some physical interaction with people, not over social media. So that's like a constant thing in my house.
Love that. And what you said, it's like hanging out with your friends, it two birds, one stone. You got vitamin D, you got your
Exactly.
health care.
Exactly.
Love that.
Yeah, I think this generation of teenagers, a lot of their friendships are online. That's a lot of their social interaction. And that, I mean, that is social interaction. So we do have to understand that, but they are definitely lacking those interpersonal skills and like face to face, like just like having a conversation with a person face to face. And the more that we can encourage that with our teenagers, the better. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a skill that, you know, my oldest didn't go into college having. It was, you know, he graduated through COVID. He was on distance learning. He didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of different things. And it probably wasn't until last year that he started ordering food by himself at a restaurant, you know, and he's 20 years old. And so those skills that you get talking to other people, it's like, they're so important in life. And one of the things I realized is he's so smart. He's so book smart and he knows all the things. But when it came to like that social navigation, he just didn't really have it. And so him being exposed to the world now and being in college, it's like he's like a new kiddo. And I think sometimes we minimize how important those skills are, because you can have all the grades, you can go to the best school, but if you can't, you know, nail an interview because you can't talk to somebody, to another adult, you know, you're gonna have some issues. And so all these things are important for a lot of reasons. And so it's been fun to watch that growth, but I've also learned, I always feel bad because my number one kiddo, he's like my guinea pig. And I've learned some lessons that I think I'm doing a little better the second time around and the third time around. But yeah, just encouraging him to have fun and experiencing like joy and just like relaxation and fun. And, you know, they learn so many skills in doing that, yet we never really talk about it. I think I touched on this already about family time and like the quality of family time. What does that look like? You know, are you guilty like I am of sitting around the living room with your entire family with everybody on their own device? You know, what is the quality of the time that you're spending with your kids? It's not very much time that I have. And so I really want to be more intentional about how I spend it with them. Am I really present, or am I just kind of tolerating it and doing what I need to do? Because it happens fast, it goes by fast. And I think I was telling Amy this the other day. I'm like, we talked about this with our empty nest conversation a couple years ago. And I remember my kid, I moved him into college. He moved into his dorm and I sat in my car and I cried for like hours about all the times he had asked me to go to the park. And I was too tired or too lazy to do that. And I was like, and he probably doesn't care or remember. I think I even talked to him about it. And I was just like broken. And I'm like, man, so much wasted time I could have had. Like time goes by so fast and you just want to go to the park and I just want to take a nap and I feel terrible and all these things. And so now it's like, I really try to be intentional about spending time with him. But again, I'm busy, I'm tired, I'm burnt out. By the time I get home from work, we talked about this last week. Like I just want to be alone and in my room, in my bed, quietly to decompress. And so what is the quality of my family time? You know, I'm all gonna get sad. But family time, it like builds self-esteem. It strengthens our bonds together. It helps kids feel secure. You know, whether they act like they like to be around you or not, there's some security in having your parent at home with you. And it does encourage.
I think, Yvonne, though, I think we have to remember that like, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. It can be just a couple of minutes that the two of you have a conversation about how silly the cat is and you like bond about that. I mean, it can be something like I was on social media yesterday, as we were talking about social media, and I saw something that and actually I wanted to talk to you about, Yvonne, if you've ever heard of this, and you too, Amy. But it was like talking about like, we all know what like trigger points are and like things that trigger us. And so this was like, as opposed to trigger points, like, I think it was called glimmer points or glitter or glimmer, I think glimmer points. And it was like the little points in your day where like, you're like, oh, the sun's on my face and that feels really good. And it's just like, so just like the little moments of like, oh, this is really awesome. Like right now, just these little moments and starting to pay attention to those. And so I think like that, like when you have time with your kids, like, I know that we all think that like we should plan the family vacation and we're all going to have this like ginormous bonding experience, but it could be like just like 45 seconds of conversation that like both of you connect and like that's it. And like that's okay. Like cherish those moments too.
I love that. And I'm gonna call my husband out because he'll never watch this video anyways. But you know, his big thing is we plan these big family vacations. We went to Europe and did all these things. But the remainder of the year, the other 51 weeks of the year, we don't really do a whole lot. We're kind of just home and you know, and so the way he spends time with the family is just those big kind of excursion, you know, big excursion that, you know, but then it's like the rest of the year we're not really connecting. And for me, I like doing silly things on the weekend. You know, sometimes I'll tell my kids to go on Yelp and find a new ice cream place and we'll try it out, or just, you know, a little, or just even more small, right? Like on the way home, we, you know, see how many Frenchies we can see being walked around the neighborhood or whatever it is. And you're right, it's just those little tiny moments. So that when your kids get to college, you don't sit in your car and cry for 2 hours like I did. Health, you know, this obviously important, and it's all the types of health. When we talk about health with our kids, it's like it's so important for so many reasons because it impacts your self-esteem, it impacts your overall like physical health, your mental health. And so this is just another talking point for your kids when you go through your wheel of life. And then again, room and environment. How much control does your kiddo have over their room? And as I wrote that question, I was laughing because my son, my older son, he has his own room, but the room is actually almost identical to a room I pinned on my Pinterest board. So it wasn't for him, it was for me. It's beautiful. It's like this rose color that my 20-year-old son probably doesn't even want, but it wasn't about him. And so as I'm thinking about this, it talks about like your personal sacred space. It's your space. It's one of the only things that kids have control over. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a jerk. It's such a beautiful room and it's not his at all. It's mine. So and some of you know, some of our kids don't have their own room and that's okay. It's just they have their space, right? Even if it's a sofa in the living room or whatnot, but do they have an area where they can just reset and recharge and rejuvenate for the next day? You know, a day at school is emotionally exhausting. A day at work is emotionally exhausting. So do they have a space to do that? And maybe that's something you could even talk about. Like I might go home and talk about, maybe he wants his room blue. I don't know. It's not about me. It's about him. Let's see, where are we with time? So, you know, just beyond academics. And again, it's like, of course, academics is a big focus for us. We want our kids to find success in life. We want them to be able to afford to live, you know, their life. But a lot of times we overlook some really important things. Like, does that allow us the room to recognize and nurture our child's strengths? My child's strength is not math. Right. And if I'm focused on the academic stuff, I might miss out on a lot of cool things that he has going on. You know, my youngest one he is not super, you know, excited about school, but he loves cars, which is something I have no knowledge about. So we have some fun conversations about that. And he's very like engineer minded. And so it's kind of cool to nurture that strength and talk about that, you know. Also, I think, you know, focusing on how much effort our kids put in. You know, maybe my youngest doesn't have you know, straight A's right now, but is he doing the best that he can? And am I encouraging the effort that he puts in and not just the product of his work? You know, maybe it's the best he can do. Maybe he can try harder, but really focusing on the effort instead of like the actual outcome of the grade allows for them to feel supported and validated in what they do. So think about your kid and their successes beyond the classroom. And when I say successes, I don't mean awards or like the best baseball player, but just things that like, I think a success is just something that brings you joy. You know, it could be something that makes you happier that you're focused on. It doesn't have to be an A or a trophy or anything like that. And then beyond academics is also, you know, like our book club for a couple of years, the gift of failure. Like if we are demanding that our kids have all these perfect scores and, you know, all these things, and we don't allow them to fail and we don't give them grace when they fail, they're not really learning. They're just trying to appease us or appease themselves or society or whatever. We're not allowing them to really grow if we don't, you know, allow them to fail. How many of you are, I think a couple of weeks ago, my son forgot his shoes at home. We literally got to work and he forgot his shoes at home. And, my mom would have never got me my shoes, but I did. And, I didn't give him to feel that failure. Maybe that's a bad example, but that like idea, like your kid forgets lunch and you bring it to the school and, they continue to forget lunch because they know that you're going to kind of pick up their slack and cover for them, if you will. So, if we're looking beyond academics, then we can really allow them to fail sometimes. A couple more sides, and this is just like some last tips, and really it's about protecting our children from that grind culture. And it's so hard because it's so necessary to get into colleges, and that is important. But really the way we can protect them best is, sometimes it's okay if they don't want to do something, hold them back occasionally from activities that will only wear them down. And when I say that, I mean that just like encourages dialogue of like, are you doing this activity because you really want to? Are you doing this activity for me as your mom, like to impress me? Like, what is your motivation for all of the energy that you spend? Is it for yourself? Is it for your future? What does that look like? And allowing them to say no sometimes. Genuine success, knowing when to push and when to let up. I think you said this in the beginning, Jenny. It's like, how do we know how hard to push? And when it's okay to just let things go. No one can be fully devoted to every endeavor, and helping kids figure out when to let the homework slide better equips them for adult life. There's times in life where I have to decide what my priority is. Is it sleep that night, or is it staying up to finish something? And so giving them the opportunity to figure out where the priorities go. This one's really important, especially kind of in our culture with like college acceptances and things like that. Like, I think competition is great, but healthy competition. High stakes academics and athletics can be cutthroat, driving kids to treat their peers as rivals rather than partners. I have so many kids at the end of every year when college acceptances come out who do not want to share their success with their friends because they don't want them to be mad at them or to be hurt by that. And so having the inability to find success in your peers' like accomplishments, that's a problem, right? I want my friends to find joy in the things that I've accomplished, and I do the same for them. But we've kind of, with this unhealthy competition, is kind of, we set them up to kind of almost like resent one another. And so really embracing healthy competition, but teaching our kids how to be happy for somebody else. Openly admiring others' strengths. There's a lot of like, oh, that person's so much better than me at this, but you can appreciate someone's strength without invalidating your own efforts and your own strengths, right? Like, I can say like, oh, Amy's really good at this in work, and that's amazing. I'm not jealous of it or coveting it in any way, but it's like, wow, she's really good at that. And so having that ability, I think, is something that can really lead to healthier adulthood. This is my last slide, and it's so true. And, every conversation I have with the parent, I know in my heart of hearts that this parent is wanting happiness and success in all the wonderful things for their kids. And a lot of times students just don't know that. Like, they feel like, I'm pretty sure my mom cares because she does this and this. Sometimes it's about just saying it very explicitly, like, you matter, I care about you. Like, it might come off like weird. If I told my kids that tonight, which I will, they're going to be like, okay, weirdo, what's going on? Are you sick? But really, like, parents should be explicit. Tell your children that they matter. You can show it in different ways, figure out how your kiddo accepts that love and validation. And I think, it's about balance in parenting too. It's like, I can be the soft mom that they can come to, and I can also hold the line and hold boundaries and have expectations of them. So really figuring out like how to find that balance so that your kid, without a shadow of a doubt, knows that you care about them as a person in all of the parts of them and all of those categories that we talked about in the life wheel. So that is what I have for today. A lot of reflection for myself and my kiddos, and hopefully the same for you, of just like remembering, like, at the end of the day, these babies, all the wonderful things for them, and however we can convey that message to them that they matter in all the parts of them, not just the school one.
Thank you. So like I said, the counselors are coming next week, and I really wanted to, like, we purposely did this topic before the counselors come, because I want you guys, please remember our conversation today, because there's going to be, you know, in high school, there's a lot of talk about getting into college, and then there is the competitiveness and how do you get, you know, if you want to get into a competitive college, and what classes do you need to take and what grades do you need to get. And I don't want to diminish that, because that stuff is important. You know, there are, like, when we talk about the East Side Promise, there's like certain things that, you know, students need to do, certain, you know, GPAs and courses they need to take to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. At the same time, just remember, there's no class or experience in high school that's going to be like make or break, and like they're never going to recover from because they didn't take this class or they didn't get this grade. This is just high school. So I think that that's really always important to like kind of like, it's just high school. And, you know, we're helping our kids keep that balance, and us keeping that balance too, because I think as parents, we can get super stressed. Like, oh my God, my kid's not going to like go to college, or they're never going to move out of the house. Like, I worry about, is my son ever going to move off the couch? I don't know, but probably he will. He probably will. It'll be okay. So thank you guys very much for this topic. I saw in the chat that you guys hopefully found it very helpful. I'm good, Amy. You're going to notice and recognize 2 glimmers today. Everybody recognize some glimmers today. Pay attention to them and see if you start seeing more of them as you pay attention to them. But you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too.
everybody. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.